Episode 96 of 5 Drinks or Midnight. In the show, we bring the questions, guests bring the drinks. We try to wrap up before midnight. Today, we are talking to Devin Ershow, CEO and co-founder of American Mash and Grain, and we're going to talk about their new spirit they just released, Borrowed Page Vol2. But before we do, like, subscribe, hit the bells, the whistles, do everything. Leave a comment if you like what we're doing. Let's get started. Thank you so much for joining us. 5 Drinks or Midnight, 5 drinks, 5 questions. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited.
Thank you. I'm so excited. What are we drinking first?
What we're going to be drinking first tonight is the first whiskey that my company released last fall in August of 2022. It's called Borrowed Page Vol1. And this, for anybody who's not familiar, Borrowed Page is sort of an extension of the mission that we have with our website, where we want to try to help bring more attention to the craft whiskey movement. So we do long form articles on the website where we do these deep dives into craft whiskey distilleries, what makes them tick, why they do what they do, how they represent themselves. And Borrowed Page is where we work with some of those distilleries that we've previously featured on the website, blend multiple styles of whiskey together to not only create new and distinctive expressions of American whiskey that are hopefully different than anything you've ever tasted before, and challenge that idea of what American whiskey can be, but also, highlight the whiskeys and the distilleries that we partnered with and the distinctive components that are within. So this first drink here, Borrowed Page Vol1, 2 different kinds of bourbon, Watershed Distillery out of Columbus, Ohio. Spirits of French Lick, Lee W. Sinclair bourbon out of West Baden, Indiana. And a Monongahela rye whiskey out of Wiggle Whiskey in Pittsburgh. And a Mesquite smoked single malt out of Whiskey Dalbac in Tucson, Arizona.
And all of them are listed right there on the bottom of the label, too. So
all logos right there on the front, so everybody knows where this came from and that we did not make it ourselves.
All right.
That was a heavy pour for 5 drinks, but let's go.
It's your Friday. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, we'll see how my version of Twinkle Twinkle comes out when I'm doing bedtime songs for my daughter tonight.
There was a star. It was really bright, and go to sleep.
Yeah. If only it were that easy. But yeah, that sounds great.
You're just getting so much right off the bat, but
big proof. I think we're probably starting with the highest proof of the night here tonight.
Perfect.
Which, in traditional whiskey tasting, fashion, that's usually not the way you want to go. But this guy clocks in over 116 proof, almost 117. And you can feel that heat on the whiskey for sure. But I do think that the oats from the Lee W. Sinclair mash bill of the Spirits of French Lick bourbon help give it this sort of creamy, oily, comforting texture that I think makes it a little, especially after a sip or two, helps it go down pretty smooth considering that proof.
It's a big flavor. It's big, bold in flavor, but it does not drink as how high it or maybe my taste buds are just shot from drinking high proof all the time. So, but
I often tell people, like, when they're like asking me about proofing or where to proof this at, I'm like, don't ask me, because like I work as a distiller too, here in Colorado. So not only do I drink high proof stuff on a regular basis, but I also am drinking off the still or tasting off the still constantly every day. So I'm just like, I have no idea how hot this is. I really don't. I will hand it to my wife or to like a friend and be like, "What do you think?" Because I have no clue if this is easy sipper or not.
Are you more like on the high end kind of the spectrum? Is that like your like flavor profile, or are
In
you?
terms of like, yeah, in terms of like proof, like where I like to drink
Yeah,
stuff, definitely. I mean, I think most whiskey enthusiasts and drinkers have like a similar evolution, which is like, you start off and you just really appreciate, you're starting to really appreciate whiskey, especially when you learn how to drink it, the right way
the
for the
right way.
first time. But you're still probably drinking a lot of like, 80 proof stuff, maybe 90 proof stuff. The second I think that any whiskey enthusiast kind of unlocks their first barrel proof whiskey, and for me it was Booker's, and then some of the Elijah Craig small batch barrel proof stuff helped keep kick the door open after Booker's like cracked it. And you start to realize how much incredible character and flavor and complexity hides behind that burn, that I feel like you get to a point where like I just want to learn how to push past it. I just want to learn how to find that appreciation. And then it was probably when I was working at Kings County in Brooklyn, they came out with a 6-year-old barrel reserve or a blender's reserve, which is probably, and that's actually how I met you, Tim. Is
Right. Yeah.
you came for like a tour or something of Kings County with a friend of yours, who's a friend of mine now too, James.
James.
And and that had just come out,
Yep.
and like I didn't even need to sell that thing. It was just like, this is one of the best whiskeys, if not the best whiskey I've ever had. Here, try some.
And it was fucking glorious. It was amazing.
But it was glorious. I actually finished my bottle of it like a week ago. I just stretched it because I only got the one.
And again, that tour, that was one of the best tours, because again, that was like, getting hammered at 11 o'clock in the morning. That was really, what else are you gonna do during COVID?
Yeah, one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
At work. No, for those of you watching, I was not drinking at work.
Yeah.
Not much. But no, this Borrowed Page Volume 1, it is bottled at cask strength. That's not something that we are like mandating for all releases. It's not what Borrowed Page Volume 2 is bottled at. Honestly, it was where those whiskeys it's where that blend sang the best, was without any extra dilution. In the blending process, we tried some samples blended down to 110 to 100 proof. We never went below 100 proof. But we had some variation of it in between, and it was actually funny. It completely changed character at 110 proof, like a completely different whiskey, which was so wild. Then it kind of returned back to what it was at 100 proof, which is like even weirder. It's like when you like if you live in New York, which I know you do, and you're ever driving and you find yourself accidentally going into New Jersey.
Yeah.
Like you make a wrong turn and you're like, I'm in the Holland Tunnel now.
Yeah. Why am I in the fucking tunnel?
That was what it was at 110 proof. It was accidentally taking the Holland Tunnel to New Jersey. And then at 100 proof, it was like, okay, I'm back into New York, but I'm more tired now. It had regained all the flavor that we loved about it at cask strength, but we had lost a lot of the body.
I think that is the best description of a whiskey we've ever had on the show. So it's like you get lost and you're going to Jersey,
Yeah.
and you're back now, and you've gone through the tunnel twice.
Yeah.
You're really stressed out and really tired.
Yeah, you've lost something of yourself.
Yeah. But all right.
Yeah.
Question 1. We always start with an origin story. So how'd you get started in the whiskey business?
Absolutely. So I always tell people that I've been sort of a whiskey fan since far before it was legally acceptable for me to be considered a whiskey fan. I'll say, like, in high school, when all of my dumbass friends were drinking like Natty Ice and Milwaukee Beast and all those crappy beers, I was much more content to have like Jack Daniels or Maker's Mark or something in my little red Solo cup.
Yep.
I remember, and like, don't get me wrong, like I love beer. I mean, my shirt might just belie that point, but I do love beer. But like drinking like Coors or Natty Ice or something is just like not what I was about. I've always been pretty tall and big, so like it also is like I'm not gonna drink 12 Natty Ices.
Right.
Like I will play beer pong. I will drink the beers that I have to drink, and I will have a like solo cup of whiskey on the side. So that's who I was. But then my wife and I went to Ireland on a vacation in like 2016, 2017. And we accidentally stumbled into the Irish Whiskey Museum
Okay.
because we were in the area because we had a tour of Trinity College, but we were way early. So we were trying to kill time, and we saw that the Irish Whiskey Museum was across the street, and a tour was just about to start. Little did I know that whiskey tours would become like such a part of my identity and professional life in the future. But we walked in, it was one of the greatest tours of all time. I just like a Pandora's box opened for me. I got completely bitten by the bug. I became obsessed with the history, obsessed with the process. We were definitely drunk at Trinity College for that tour, like fully drunk. But I spent the rest of that trip drinking as much Irish whiskey as I could get my hands on, because everything is better when you're there.
Of course.
Right.
Absolutely.
And I think a little bit of that is like the magic of it all. And a little bit of that is because it's better. Like, and like, I think the magic of it is the whiskey. Like, Powers is probably just as good when you buy it at the liquor store here as it was at like the pub. But then like that's like the magic of it. The reality is like Guinness is better in Ireland.
Oh yes.
And Guinness is one of my favorite beers, and I've never been able to really enjoy it since coming back from Ireland because it's just so friggin' good there. So I came home from that trip, and I was just kind of like, all right, I feel like I've got a loose grasp of Irish whiskey and its history and styles and all that stuff. And then started getting some certifications. I took my certified bourbon steward, exam online from Stave and Thief Society, from Moonshine University. I got a brand ambassador job from Wiggle Whiskey in Pittsburgh, who actually is in Borrowed Page Vol1. Their whiskey is phenomenal, so I wanted them in it anyway. But them being in Vol1 is kind of a little bit of like an homage to like how my professional life in whiskey started, because they were my first ever job in this industry. So Wiggle Whiskey hired me to basically show up at liquor stores and restaurants and stuff and like do tastings for them in New York, which was one of their markets. And then I found out that Stave and Thief was offering their first ever executive bourbon steward class outside of Kentucky at Kings County Distillery. So I forked over the money for that. It was like that, Futurama meme of, Fry being like, take my money.
Shut up and take my money.
So I forked over the money. I showed up. I did the course there, got my executive bourbon steward status, and yet another coin, not as cool as the ones that you gave me, but and met Colin and met Leah, who at the time was the tour and events, or the tour manager there. Basically was like, hey, hire me, please. Your tour is awesome. I want to do that. I would be good at it. Please hire me. Got Colin to sign my book, of Guide to Urban Moonshining.
Nice.
Leah hired me as a tour guide, which I did for about 6 months. And then the pandemic hit and nothing was going on anymore. And at this point, I was feeling pretty distraught because I felt like at that point, I was pretty sure, like, I really hate my day job and I love whiskey, and I've started to work in the industry, and I was starting to get some traction, and I was like, now it's all gone. because the world is broken and we're never going back outside. So I was sort of, complaining, as I am one to do, to my best friend, Chase, who has been my best friend since we were 5 years old. And Chase, who has worked in the sort of brand storytelling realm his entire career and knows basically nothing about whiskey, but does love to drink, was like, hey, I have an idea. Let's start a whiskey blog. We can interview craft whiskey distilleries. Most of what's on the internet is tasting notes. If they write anything about the distillery itself, it's like a paragraph or two. Let's interview distilleries. You know a lot about whiskey history. You know a lot about whiskey process and the philosophy behind making it. I know a lot about branding and brand storytelling. We can tell holistic stories where we combine your expertise and my expertise, and we can write these really long, holistic features that do a deep dive and cover these distilleries like nobody else is doing. And I think when he tells this, like for me, I'm like thinking of it as this incredible way to like help the industry. When he tells the story, he's like, I just wanted to get on Zoom and drink with my friend. And granted, like, who cares what his motivations or my motivations were? That's how the website started. And American Mash and Grain, the website, launched in July 2020. Later on that year, I actually took over for Leah as the tour and events manager at Kings County Distillery, which I did for about 8 months before I ran out of money and had to drag my sorry butt back to film and television while building American Mash and Grain. But it's been an amazing journey these last 3 years that we've been operating this website. We've spoken to so many incredible people. We've gotten such an amazing peek behind the curtain. And it's just been really inspiring. So many of these people that start these small distilleries sacrifice so much. They quit a job where they had a 401k or they had like a 6-figure salary because they wanted to make whiskey the way they wanted to make it. They like mortgaged their house. They took out loans. They took such huge risk, and to do what? To get into a market to try to go against Jack Daniels and Jim Beam. Like, good luck.
Yeah.
So it's just been such an inspiring last few years, and I continue to be super humbled to get to talk to those people. Honestly, to get to talk to people like you too. And just like, it's just been such a gift being in this world.
All right. Question 2, drink 2. What are we drinking?
All right. We are going to drink one of the components that is in Borrowed Page Vol2, which just came out earlier in May. So this first whiskey we're going to drink is from Mammoth Distilling Company or Distillery up in northern Michigan. Really, really cool place. If anybody has never heard of Mammoth before, go to our website. It's the first time in the history of our website where we considered splitting a feature into a 2-part feature. That's how much cool stuff there is to talk about Mammoth. They're incredible. We're going to drink their Woolly Rye.
Okay.
You might be able to buy some of it on their website. I know that they have an e-commerce solution just like we do. But that's one of the reasons that the Borrowed Page series is so cool, because sometimes we do work with these distilleries that, in terms of their personal distribution, they're pretty local. So the Borrowed Page series, which is available to buy in 47 states across the country, it gives you an opportunity to taste an aspect of whiskeys that otherwise you wouldn't be able to taste unless you were physically in northern Michigan.
Okay.
Which, by the way, also sounds like a beautiful place to go. So if you want to physically be in northern Michigan, like, go ahead. Maybe not in the winter, but like, make your choices wisely. So we're going to try some Woolly Rye here, which is 37% of our Borrowed Page Vol2, which we're going to close out with tonight. So, everybody, edge of your seat.
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday! We'll sell you the whole seat, but you'll only need the edge. Be there!
keep your pants on, whatever whatever version of that sentiment you want to go with. So when we got these whiskeys, we got 3 samples from Mammoth. We chose 2 of them. We chose barrel 862, as you can see here on this, which is a little over 2 years old. It was 109.8 proof out of the barrel, because they go in at a lower entry proof typically. It had that cinnamon raisin bread pudding nose to it. If we taste this whiskey here, cheers to you, Tim.
Cheers.
What's great about Woolly Rye is it is just a beautiful rye expression. It doesn't have that big spicy punch that a lot of people think. It's not like a black pepper or a cinnamon bomb, but it's got these beautiful light sweet notes from the new charred oak up front, and then it has this sort of beautiful baking spice center. And the 862 was giving us that. It was a great expression of what Woolly Rye is like. The problem with barrel 862 is that the body is pretty light, which is not like Woolly Rye, and it basically had 0 finish to it. So it smelled great. It had this beautiful opening. It gave us those mild baking spices, and then it just died.
Okay.
So there was another barrel that they sent us, which very weirdly, if you ever get into this industry, you notice that when people start sending you barrel samples, you'll get a lot of stuff that has barrel numbers on it. Sometimes it's letters and numbers.
Yep.
What it never is just letters, which is what this is. I'm trying to get to a point where my blurred screen doesn't ruin this.
RTB.
It just says RTB. So, which of course Mammoth didn't explain. So I had to call them and be like, so hey, thank you for the giant samples that you sent. What is RTB? And they explained to me, RTB was a 53-gallon barrel of whiskey using their older cooperage, which was from the barrel mill. They've now switched to Kelvin. It leaked. So they had to recooper that whiskey into a 30-gallon barrel.
Okay.
So this is actually a double oaked version of their rye that is over 3 years old. So it's older than the regular Woolly Rye samples. It's proofed at 121 proof. So remember, 862 was 109.8.
Yeah.
Big jump. And it's spent a decent amount of time in 30 gallons. So it's also getting a lot more spirit to oak interaction, because it's in that smaller cooperage. RTB stands for
Children of a Man Named Royal Tenenbaum.
That's what RTB means. This whiskey is really intense. But the body on it and the sort of beautiful oaky and spicy tannic quality and the finish on this whiskey was remarkable. So we thought to ourselves, we have to have both of these barrels in this blend. We have to have 862 because that sings the song that Woolly Rye is, which is part of the point of the Borrowed Page series. But we also have to have RTB in here because not only is that a phenomenal story, but the incredible flavor profile and finish that comes through in RTB, which I think, and we'll get there, I think that finish really shows up in Borrowed Page Volume 2.
All right. So question 2, you guys have a mission on your a mission statement on your website, and we absolutely love a mission statement. So you guys say that you're on a mission to elevate the profile of American craft whiskey.
That's right.
How's it going?
It's a Sisyphean task, because it doesn't seem like we're taking any of the market share away from Jim Beam, which is wild to me. No, I think it's actually going okay.
Okay.
And I say that because obviously when we launched the website, we were getting like 100 people a month coming through.
Yep.
You know, first of all, we decided in a era where attention spans are shrinking by the minute to write like 6 or 7 page long articles about things, right? We're not doing a podcast or a YouTube show. Like, we're like, hey, you want to read something for like 10 minutes? So we chose an interesting medium. We may have some different styles of content coming out. I have no idea when this show is going to go live, but keep your eyes out. American Mash and Grain might have some new stuff coming your way. But you know, it's a niche audience, and we know to a certain extent that we're writing for the 1%, and not the 1% that Bernie Sanders is always complaining about, but like the 1% being like people like you and me, people who are like, what kind of fermentation methods do they use? Do they use a saison yeast, or is it a turbo yeast? Like, you know, like.
I mean, so I guess that's kind of more of where my question, because again, I love your guys' site, and
yeah.
You know, I went to art school and I can't read very well. I can just color. So,
Hey,
but
same.
It was, the question was more like, do you think that like American people like that 1% that you talked about, like it's do you think it's starting to expand to like the 5%, or do you think it's getting even like more narrower to the guy like, are you using turbo yeast? Like, is it kind of like more?
I think we're expanding. What's cool about once we started showing up on podcasts and stuff like that when Volume 1 came out is we had podcasters off the record, some of them on the record, but mostly off the record, be like, hey, so I use your website to research when I'm doing interviews with people. And we're like, cool. Like, that's kind of part of the point. Like, you know, one of my hopes when we launched the website is that once we, you know, because we put a different distillery on the website every month, which granted is a lot slower than, it's a lot less content than like a whiskey wash or something like that is going to do. But, you know, once we're like several years into this, we're going to have a pretty decent like encyclopedia of these distilleries. And I did kind of want us to be like a great one. If you're not going to go directly to the source, well, I wanted to be like a one-stop shop. It was like, do you want to know everything that there really is to know about this place? This is the website that you go to. So that's part of what I wanted it to be. So hearing from like podcasters and some like major podcasters that are like, if you have an article on the place that I'm interviewing, I will read that article because we've basically done all of your work for you.
Thank you.
And I know that because I do extensive research when we're interviewing a place, and I'm reading like 30 articles to get the questions that I ask them to put into one article.
Yep.
But where I think that it has expanded beyond that 1% is when we brought Megan in, because again, Megan is not a whiskey nerd like I am, who's going to like focus on turbo yeast. She's going to be like, the beautiful thing about this is not even so much like the method in which they are distilling as it is like this incredible story that's here. And I think that is what has helped make our articles probably a little bit more approachable to a wider audience, luckily. And hopefully we glean a little extra street cred, a little extra notoriety along the way. That brings more attention to the website, which again brings more attention to these distilleries. So it's all cyclical, but ultimately where this question started or something, I think.
Yeah.
2 drinks in, I don't know. We started at almost 60% alcohol.
And you had
all
a big
of it, and I did have a big pour. All of it is going back to that mission that you read on our website, which is that we want to expand the profile of the American craft whiskey movement. So hopefully we're doing that. All right.
So, question 3, drink 3.
Yeah.
What are we drinking?
All right. Drink 3 is another component that's in Borrowed Page Volume 2. This is from Talnua Distillery in my home state of Colorado, out in Arvada, Colorado. Now, Talnua makes a very, very interesting style of whiskey. They make American single pot still whiskey. Now, in Irish law, I think it has to be like 30%, at least 30% malted barley, at least 30% raw barley, green barley, unmalted barley, and then 30% or more, or whatever, of whatever you want. At Talnua, they stuck to a pretty traditional mash bill of a 50-50 split, 50% malted barley, 50% raw barley, triple distilled. They have these absolutely gorgeous copper pot stills at Talnua. Maybe the only more beautiful copper pot stills here in America might be at Virginia Distillery Company, which will be our drink number 4. But triple distilled. And then the American kind of twist on this idea is that they age it in a variety of different finishes for different products, but their flagship product is aged in virgin American oak, the same way that a bourbon or an American rye would be. Now, the whiskey that is in Borrowed Page Volume 2 actually comes from their Continuum cask, which is their Solera method of making whiskey. So for anybody who's not familiar with Solera, basically you take this giant oak fooder is what it's called. It's basically just a giant oak vessel. It's not charred or anything on the inside, so you're not getting a ton of like oak influence from that. It's really just something that's going to mellow out that product, but it's not like completely inert like stainless steel. It's not totally like flavor crazy like, whiskey barrel is. And you fill that thing up, you siphon some out for your batch, and then whatever you took out to do your batch, you replace with new whiskey. So all the whiskey that goes into that Continuum cask is their flagship product, which is their 50-50 split mash bill, triple distilled, American single pot still, aged in virgin oak barrels for, I think, at least 2 years. That goes into the vat. So it has this kind of constant blending, mingling process, which is known as Solera. It's very popular in making wine. Not only is that a super cool version of whiskey and another cool story element to add into Borrowed Page Volume 2, it was also the only thing that they could offer us. Talnua is still a relatively new and young whiskey company. They make one of the most unique styles of American whiskey that's out there right now, which is why we were so attracted to using them for Volume 2. So we only had one option to choose from Talnua, which was their Continuum cask. But it's this incredible whiskey. Get into it now a little bit. If you have the opportunity wherever you are to drink Talnua American single pot still whiskey, just do it. This whiskey is fucking. Can I curse on this show? I feel like
absolutely.
I have
We are an adult show.
Okay. I feel like I already like. I'm the person who's sworn 20 times and is like, "Hey, can I curse?"
Yeah. We're good.
This whiskey is so fucking good. Like, and I love single pot still whiskey. Give me Redbreast 12, Redbreast 18, give me Writer's Tears, give me Green Spot. Like those whiskeys are some of my, and for anybody who has lasted this long watching this show, dealing with me, that my whole whiskey journey started with Irish whiskey. So honestly, single pot still whiskey was one of the first whiskeys that I truly fell in love with. Me and Patrick and Megan, who started Talnua, actually have a very similar story. I'm not going to bore you with it. Again, go to American Mash and Grain, read the article. But the short story is they went to Ireland for their honeymoon. They were in a pub at like really early in the morning because it was the Rugby World Cup. They're huge rugby fans. Ireland was playing America. So they went to a pub that was open at like 9 o'clock in the morning, watching this game. And the distributor for Middleton, who makes Redbreast, and it was like when Redbreast was just coming back on the market. It had been gone for like decades. It was just coming back. They were dropping off a case of Redbreast cast strength to the pub that morning. The bartender basically like opened the box and like poured them a sample at 9 a.m. watching rugby, and they fell in love with single pot still whiskey. Not exactly the same story as me, maybe a little bit more romantic and beautiful than me just like getting drunk at the Irish Whiskey Museum, but similar thing. We both fell in love with Irish whiskey. Talnua and their interpretation of single pot still here in America is incredible. You should get it. You should find it, drink it. It's amazing.
But all right, well, I think this leads perfectly into question 3. Not looking for industry secrets or your guys' secrets, but could you talk a little bit about the process that you guys go about from when you're about, like, let's just say you're going to do volume 3? Like, how do you pick the distilleries? How do you, because each one you said it has a guest blender. So like, how, what's the process of going from picking like distilleries to your blender to bottle? Like,
yeah. No, it's a great question, and I appreciate the question to somebody who's done something twice. You know, because after you do something once, there's literally no methodology. After you do something twice, there's some, but like, admittedly, like we're still figuring it out. Almost embarrassingly to admit, before we did volume 1, I hadn't even really like blended whiskeys in my cabinet together. Okay. Like I hadn't blended apple juice, let alone whiskey. Like, and not only that, but I was like, I have this vision, you know, I was like, we're going to blend different styles of whiskey. And not only are we going to create something amazing, but each individual element is going to sing and be beautiful. And nobody else really does that, first of all. You know, blending whiskey is not a new thing. The Scottish have been doing it for generations incredibly successfully, and it is very well accepted in Scotland. In America, it is very frowned upon to the term blended, even though 95% of the products on the, that is a completely made up statistic. Do not at me. 95%
leave your
of
comments
the products
below.
Right, yeah. I looked it up, and are blended, right? Even major, you know, companies, flagship product, those are blended whiskeys because they're blending multiple barrels together. But like the term blended in America is so taboo.
Yep.
For good reason, because a lot of like prohibition and post-prohibition era stuff, the word blended got real bastardized with, you know, people doing the wrong thing and adding the wrong stuff to make whiskey that was not really whiskey, and that's the tale as old as time. Nobody is blending to my knowledge, and I'm sure there are people, but nobody's blending this many styles of whiskey. I think that, and then I'm getting off of a weird tangent here. This is where this show, I think it's like Hot Ones. It like gets to its point, which is like I'm like halfway through and I'm like a little toasty now. I see what you've done. You've disarmed me. You're not making me eat hot wings.
Exactly.
But you have disarmed me to an extent. Very clever move. Let's see if I'm going to continue. Let's see if I'm going to continue this interview or not.
He's like, nope, I'm out.
All right. No, you're lucky.
Yeah. He's sticking around, folks. All right.
So brain discombobulated. So prohibition, post-prohibition had a big part of it. The other big part of it is that flavor profiles changed in like the 60s and 70s. People were leaning more towards vodkas and gins and lighter products. So American whiskey became known as this thing where you take cheap whiskey basically and then blend it with neutral grain spirit or vodka. And make a lighter style of whiskey that you can buy for like $20, $15, which is crap. And that's been the connotation of American whiskey. Part of our hope with Borrowed Page is to be a part of changing that negative connotation of what American whiskey is. So, like, we are never going to produce a bourbon. We are never going to produce a rye. We are not interested in just blending or producing another bourbon on the market, another rye, another single malts. We don't want to do that. There are a lot of incredible people that are doing something really similar to us that are doing that, like Lost Lantern and all those things. They're doing amazing work. We want to be different a little bit. So that's when we settled on the idea that we're gonna blend multiple styles of whiskey together. We're not going to just put out another malt, another bourbon. We're going to blend these styles. But and because the craft movement has already started that transition or that conversion of the connotation of American whiskey. I mean, you have amazing American whiskeys being produced by Stolen Wolf in Pennsylvania, by Few Spirits in Evanston. Incredible American whiskeys that are high quality, made from really great ingredients, made the right way, not diluted with neutral grain spirit. The craft movement has already started to change the conversation of what American whiskey can be. We're hoping to piggyback off of that and push it a step further by introducing unique flavor profiles, unique aroma profiles that are completely different, because even with the craft movement, a lot of what you see in the American whiskey category is a blend of bourbon and rye, right?
Yep.
It's our bourbon's a little young. Our rye is really good at a young age. We're going to blend these two things together because they're really beautiful together. And we are going to make an amazing product. But very specifically, when we came up with this concept, we're going to go beyond that. And granted, volume 1 is like 58% bourbon, two different styles of bourbon, column distilled from Watershed in Ohio, hot distilled from the incredible Alan Bishop in West Baden, Indiana. We have the rye in there, the Monongahela rye from Wiggle. We also feel like all of these whiskeys are telling a story. But then we throw that curveball in there for volume 1, mesquite smoked single malt. Boom. That's different than what anybody else is doing. When we were coming to volume 2, we thought, okay, volume 2 has to be very different. And that's the idea, is that each release of Borrowed Page is going to be very different from the last. We're not going to work with the exact same combination of distilleries. We're not going to work with the exact same styles of whiskey. So each one of these releases is going to be very specifically, very small batch, very limited release, very different. And I think what probably motivated volume 2, from a conceptual standpoint, was no bourbon, right? And that's going back to that idea that, like, a lot of American whiskeys that are out there from craft distilleries are a bourbon rye blend. So we said we kind of did that with a little curveball of mesquite smoked single malt for volume 1. Volume 2, no bourbon. That was our rule. That was the conceptual genesis of volume 2. That's why building around a product like Talnua, a single pot still whiskey, was so important. Luckily, with volume 2, unlike with volume 1, all the distilleries we reached out to said yes. I don't know if that's because of volume 1 or not, but we had a couple swings and misses with volume 1.
I don't even remember what question 3 was, but I think we fucking nailed it. So
we crushed it. Absolutely.
All right. So question 4, drink 4. What are we drinking?
All right. We are going to be drinking the last components of Borrowed Page Volume 2, which is Courage and Conviction, beautiful framing from Tim. Courage and Conviction from Virginia Distillery Company. So Virginia Distillery Company, for those of you who don't know, is in Livingston, Virginia. They make American single malt. They're actually one of the leading producers of American single malts, one of the big members of the American Single Malt Commission. They've done a lot of hard work in getting American single malt standardized by the TTB, which theoretically will happen at some time in my lifetime. The 90-day comment period ended like 4 months ago. So it's like, I mean, I guess the government is dealing with some other stuff. This is an incredible American single malt distillery in Livingston, Virginia. It was the dream child of this man who unfortunately passed well before his time. And then he was building the distillery and then unfortunately passed away. His son, Gareth, and his wife took up the charge of finishing off this distillery, figuring out how to basically try to make a Scottish style single malt in Virginia, which is, for anybody who's been in Virginia and Scotland, two very different climates and geographical areas. And what they have settled on is an incredible product. And their flagship, which they call Courage and Conviction, is actually a blend in and of itself of their single malt whiskey, single malt meaning made from one distillery, malt in this case meaning 100% malted barley. They have that same distillate. They age it in 3 different styles of cooperages. They age it in first use bourbon barrels. So, barrels that previously had aged bourbon, they put their single malts in there. They age it in former Oloroso sherry butts. So a sherry cask finish, and then they are sherry cask maturation, and then a cuvee cask, which is a red wine barrel that they shave and then re-char and then put their single malt in it, which is a very cool. Actually, I say re-char, but I was talking with Amanda Beckwith, the lead blender from Virginia, the other day. Most wine barrels are not charred, as is the case with these barrels. So they're called STR, shaved, toasted, recharred, but the R doesn't actually apply because these barrels were not charred in the first place. So it's really STC barrels, shaved, toasted, charred. So these had red wine. They shaved the inside down to take that first layer off. They then toast it. They then char it. They then put their single malt whiskey into it. So their flagship is a combination of those 3. For Borrowed Page, we were sent barrel samples of all of those styles. We chose the sherry matured single malt and the cuvee matured single malt to go into Borrowed Page.
Nice.
Cheers.
Cheers.
I've said this on a couple different platforms. We have tasted a lot of incredible single malts in the last 3 years since starting the company and the website. I'm not saying Virginia is better than all of the other single malts, but there is a refinement and a delicacy to their whiskey that really does rival Scottish single malts in a very impressive way. And for a while, when they were first starting out, they were blending their whiskey with a Scottish whiskey, and they still release that product under a different brand name. But when they came out with Courage and Conviction, which is having the courage of your convictions, is something that Gareth's father used to say a lot. It was like a sort of motto of his, or a credo of his,
Gotcha.
which is why they named their flagship Courage and Conviction. When they came out with this Courage and Conviction flagship, the blend is amazing. The individual cask versions, the used bourbon, the used sherry, they're all exceptional. And I think one of the things that attracted us to Virginia to partner with for Volume 2, rather than going with one of the other distilleries that makes a phenomenal single malt, is that they are already blending in-house to make their flagship. And we could go to them, which I did, and say, send us the individual components that make up your flagship. And then we can work with the other whiskeys that we're blending and figure out how to show off your whiskey by using the specific components that will showcase your whiskey while not interfering with the other ones. And that was something that we did not really have an opportunity to do up until this point.
Sure.
So working with Virginia gave us an incredible opportunity to really get to play in a way. And I would say maybe that's unfair. Whiskey Del Back gave us that a little bit, because when we were doing volume 1, they're the mesquite smoke single malt that's in volume 1. They sent us their classic single malt, which is not mesquite smoked at all. They sent us their blend that they do in-house to be their Dorado, which is their mesquite smoke product, which is actually a blend of their mesquite smoke distillate and their classic.
Okay.
And they sent us a 100% mesquite smoked sample, which when we were blending volume 1, I was very bullheaded, being like, we're using the 100% mesquite smoked. And then in the blending process, I was like, we're not using it because it is super intense and impossible to work with, which is probably why their mesquite smoked product is not even 100% mesquite smoked. But we really got a chance to play with Virginia with these 3 different styles of single malt, which was really, really fun.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So that we'll jump right into question 4. I talked a little bit how Megan kept, she didn't recognize at all. But Kelsey, on the other hand, she's got some questions for you. So Kelsey wants to know, during the process of Borrowed Page Volume 2, where were you, like, can you describe the moment where you were like, yes, this is it?
Yes. All right, Kelsey, not so bad. I was like, don't make me regret hiring you at Kings County Distillery and American Mash and Grain.
Yep.
Because I have hired this woman twice, because that is how awesome she is.
Yep.
Kelsey Kuntz, who is now the head tour guide at Kings County Distillery, a role. I hired her as a tour guide when I was the tour and events manager. When I left Kings County Distillery, I was like, she's special. You need to give her a better title. I was like, you got to give her something. Like, she is, and all the tour guides at Kings, I'm sure, I don't know them all now, but I'm sure they're all phenomenal. But Kelsey, as soon as she walked through the doors, the gatehouses at Kings County, I was like, this is a special person. She's also the social media manager for American Mash and Grain, not Kings County.
Yeah, no.
She is the social media manager for us at American Mash and Grain. So if you ever DM us on Instagram or Twitter or anything, I would say you actually have about a 50-50 chance that it's me or it's Kelsey. And hopefully it's Kelsey. Just because she is a lovely person who you should get to know.
Yep.
Who has a phenomenal palate. I mean, I could talk about how awesome Kelsey is for hours. Okay. But the question that she asked, which I totally remember, which is, what is the moment that we settled on the blend basically for volume 2, where we were like, this is it?
Yep.
So it's a little bit of a journey, but I'm going to make it as quick as possible. Probably, and it's great that you're asking this during the Virginia distillery section, because probably the barrel sample that we got from all of the distilleries that I was like, wow, this whiskey is on its own one of the best whiskeys I have ever tasted, period, was the Oloroso Sherry Cask American Single Malt that we got from Virginia Distillery Company. And I don't say that lightly. I really mean it. Just tasting the sample of this whiskey, I was like, this is one of the greatest whiskeys I've ever had. So right away, I was like, this whiskey has to be a part of it, has to be in the blend. Now, something that we learned from Ann Dimmick, the guest blender from volume 1, was as often as you can, try to do your initial blends, assuming you're going to use every drop that's in the barrel. that you're considering. You've got no leftover, you've got no excess.
Okay.
And that's how it worked out for volume 1. Volume 1 is a blend of 100% of the barrels that we got. Not a drop was left over. Thank God, because I don't know what the hell we would have done with it. And at that point, I didn't even really consider the fact that we could buy a barrel of whiskey, and maybe not take it all, you know. So the problem is that the Oloroso sherry cask that we were sent from Virginia had 140 gallons in it. That's a lot of whiskey. So, because those sherry butts are big. This is like a 700-liter barrel of whiskey. When we were doing those initial blends with Ryan and Chase, that sherry just obliterated everything. Everything else disappeared. All you could taste was sherry. So obviously, unlike with volume 1, we became immediately aware that tactic of use everything that's in the barrel was not going to work this time. So it took a long time for us to scale that sherry back until we got to the point where we were like, this stings. This is, to quote Trolls 2, harmony, And again, I'm the father of a 4-year-old, so I could quote the Trolls movies all the live long day. That was harmony. We found a whiskey that was beautiful. The problem was that it only took 20 gallons of that 140-gallon, barrel. When we were blending, I didn't know if Virginia was going to be willing. I didn't know 2 things. I didn't know if they were going to be willing to siphon off 20 gallons and send it to us, or if I was going to have to buy 140 gallons of a sherry single malt and then use 20 of it and then have 120 gallons of sherry single malt.
Just hanging around.
And leftovers of nothing else. Like, if there was leftovers of other stuff, we could get into conversations that are well beyond where we are as a company. Yeah. Like, let's do single barrel bottlings of all this stuff. We could sell it as a pack and all these things that we're not equipped to do. That my partner would literally start flop sweating if I suggested it. So because I was really unsure of that was going to be the fact, we came up with a secondary blend that had no sherry in it, which was also very good. But to Kelsey's question and your question, subsequently, when we found that version that had the 20 gallons of sherry in it, that was the moment.
Okay.
Where I was like, in my heart, I was like, that's volume 2. This is volume 2 if we can't get what we want.
Gotcha.
Luckily, Virginia was willing to siphon off 20 gallons of that sherry cask and keep the rest for themselves.
Gotcha.
So I don't have to worry about 120 gallons of leftover. They were willing to send us 20 gallons of that and the full cuvee cask that we bought. And we were able to bottle the whiskey that was perfect and amazing and everything I wanted it to be.
What we've been waiting for all night long.
Oh, yeah. Borrowed Page, Volume 2. So I'll show off the bottle.
Yep, I was going to say here.
A little bit. Borrowed Page Volume 2 came out on May 2nd, I think. It has, as we have talked about, in succession, Mammoth Distilling, Rye, Talnua, Single Pot Still Whiskey out of Colorado, and Virginia Distillery Company Sherry Cask Single Malt and Cuvée Single Malt out of Virginia Distillery. Now, if you take off this annoying sticker, which, don't take off the sticker. Whatever you do, make sure that you don't remove this sticker. which is on there for a reason. Don't take it off. Oh boy, we got that horrible thing. But you will see blended with, and then that one dude Ryan's logo. Unfortunately, it was a situation where, because of our release date, I had to tell the label company to produce our labels, technically before the TTB had approved them.
Oh,
The TTB then came back and said, you can't say blended with and then just have a picture of something. You have to say what it is that you blended with. So, because we were already screwed on that, I unfortunately had to produce a sticker to cover Ryan's logo on all of the labels. So don't remove the sticker.
Don't. Yeah.
Because that's what the TTB wants. That's what the TTB wants. And what the TTB wants, the TTB gets, honey. Okay? But if the sticker falls off, that's life, man. That's just how it goes.
That's circumstances.
Yeah. And I know Ryan will tell you to not take off the sticker. So this is Borrowed Page Volume 2. As you have gleaned from this long conversation where I have diatribed into a million places, this is a blend of rye whiskey from Mammoth Distilling in northern Michigan, of single pot still whiskey from Talnua in Arvada, Colorado, and two different styles of American single malt from Virginia Distillery Company. We proofed this one down because that is where it's sang the best. This is at 110 proof. So we proofed it down to 55% alcohol. Volume 1, we produced about 720 bottles total. Once Volume 1 we're about 50% sold out of Volume 1. Once that's gone, Volume 1's never being made again. We made about the same number of full-size bottles of Volume 2.
Okay.
But we added a little over 300 of these half-size bottles of Volume 2. Once that's gone, it's gone too. And I know what I love about Volume 2. This is about what you think about Volume 2, Tim.
Just fucking glorious. This is so nice. This is really... It's so, like, you get, like, the creme brulee that you talked about. Like, you get I get more of the banana out of this. Like, it just is...
It's honestly, it's like a fruit cornucopia. I was talking with Ryan the other day, and it's like, it's like that picture of the conch shell with the like fruit coming out of it. Because so the Mammoth is giving that sort of cinnamon raisin banana bread that we talked about way back at the beginning of the show. So those sort of classic vanilla and caramel sort of cinnamony notes that you expect, but also a little bit of that dry, those dried raisin kind of qualities. The Talnua is bringing that bananas foster, those caramelized cooked bananas. The sherry cask single malt from Virginia is bringing some berry notes, some raspberries, some strawberries to the table. And then that cuvee cask from Virginia is bringing some darker fruit notes, like, dark cherries, maybe a little bit more dried fruit notes and a little bit of spice to it as well. I mean, if you like fruit and you like whiskey, on the nose.
Yeah. Like this, I mean, again, you sent me the cocktail that you guys have up on your Instagram for this, and the raspberry syrup for this. Like, this is, it's just a topping on the fucking creme brulee. It's so fucking good. Like that with the,
Thinking about those kind of raspberry berry notes that are in this whiskey from that sherry cask. And of course, immediately my brain jumped to the Clover Club cocktail, right? So I was like, all right, Clover Club, here's my workbench. But the struggle is I still need this whiskey to sing in this summer cocktail where I've got to throw effing citrus into it and all these things that destroy whiskey in a cocktail. So I've got to take the Clover Club and I've got to work it so that it is pink enough to be Clover Club-esque with a very dark whiskey, and not gray. I make all my syrups from scratch because I'm also a bartender. I learned how to bartend at Kings County because my role as the tour events manager was secretly also the assistant general manager of the tasting room. I learned once being hired. So I learned how to bartend at Kings, and and at Kings we make all of our juices and all of our syrups fresh. So I make all of my syrups fresh. So I make my raspberry syrup. And I know I got to throw some lemon juice in there, like the Clover Club asked, but I'm like, all right, I'm going to dial that citrus down. I'm going to increase that raspberry syrup to help give me that pink color. And that's basically, and I'm going to do a heavy pour of Borrowed Page Vol2. Hence the custom cocktail, the summer cocktail for Borrowed Page, from clover to clover, playing off of our sort of storytelling.
There you go.
Theme that we have from clover to clover. You can see it on our Instagram. Hopefully you'll see it on Tim's Instagram soon. But
very much soon, yep.
The other cool thing is that now we're able to offer some products from distilleries that we've featured on our website. So go to our website. You can buy Borrowed Page, but you can also buy some of the whiskeys that we've featured as well. Stolen Wolf, Spirits of French Lick, Catoctin Creek, Mammoth. I think there's a few more. Check out that store for sure.
All right. So that leaves us in our fifth and final question.
Yeah.
Comes down to the Whiskey Wednesday coin. You can flip it, you can spin it, you can do whatever you want, but the coin gives us the answer. Okay. This question would have been so much better if Chase joined us, but we'll just have to interview him when volume 3 comes out. Question 5.
Yeah.
Can you outdrink Chase?
Fuck. All right. I'm going to leave this to the coin.
Yeah.
And here's why. So here's a few things about Chase. My best friend since I'm 5. And you can assume how old I am from this video because I'm not going to tell you. But it's been a very long time. Chase, here's some fun facts about my partner. Chase went to Lehigh University for college.
Okay.
Chase was in a fraternity. I was not. Chase drank Natty Ice in high school. Yeah. I drank whiskey. Okay. Chase is about 6'1". If I'm wrong about that, Chase, I'm sorry, but you seem shorter than me. I'm 6'3". Chase is about 6'1". Chase probably has a good. This is so mean.
We have a little Chase pros and cons graphic happening right here.
Chase probably has a good 40 to 50 pounds on me. I'm so sorry, buddy. I'm about 200 pounds. Chase is probably a good, like I said, I don't need to belabor a point. Chase is much more handsome than I am. And in many ways, much more charming than me. Chase's 2 front teeth are not as big as this. I'm just trying to make up a little bit. Let's see what the coin says. I'm spinning it.
All right.
You can't see it. Fuck no.
Fuck no.
It says.
All right.
That's definitely wrong. Chase can definitely outdrink me. The coin says no. I say probably yes. And that is purely based on my bachelor party, on his bachelor party, where Chase is the kind of guy, and again, he's a lovely human being. Chase is the kind of guy who will wake up hungover, and his fraternity mindset to waking hungover is better start drinking in the morning.
All right.
He can outdrink me, but American Mash and Grain does not exist without the two of us. I'm sorry that his shitty internet in San Francisco.
Yeah.
We have not featured a whiskey out of the Golden State. I blame that. But he is just one of the best people that I've ever known. I'm sorry that you didn't get to meet him tonight.
That's all right. It just means we have to do another one. So it's totally cool.
Yeah. Volume 3, hopefully coming out at some point later here in 2023. So keep your eyes out.
All right. Excellent. It was an amazing trip. And I hope we get to drink together very soon. So
Quick plug.
Please.
If you're interested in learning more about craft whiskey distilleries across the country, visit our website at grain.com. I know that's a weird website because our company's name is American Mash and Grain. American is not in the website title and is not in the website title. Mash, the letter N, as in Nancy, okay? As in, no way you're watching to the end of this episode. Grain.com. That is where you can read the incredible articles that are written by the amazing Megan Swanson that we feature of these remarkable small producer craft distilleries across the country every single month. It is also the only place, aside from a couple influencer stores, where you can purchase Borrowed Page. Borrowed Page, sadly, is not available in your liquor store. It is not available at your local bar, your local restaurant. It is exclusively available online, and the best place to buy it is on our website. I cannot stress this enough. These are limited release products, and once these are gone, we are never remaking this whiskey again. That's part of the fun. It's also the sad part of American Mash and Grain. If you want to know what Volume 1, which was with Wiggle Whiskey, Whiskey Del Back, Watershed Distillery, Whiskey Del Back, Spirits of French Lick. This is your fault, Tim. If you want to know what Volume 1 tastes like, a blend of 2 bourbons, a Monongahela rye, and a mesquite smoke single malt, or Volume 2, which is a blend of rye whiskey, single pot still whiskey, and 2 really cool American single malts, you better go on there and buy it now, okay? Because I can't guarantee you that it's going to be there later. Tim, thank you so much for having us on the having me. I say us because Chase is here in spirit. He's a soft. Chase isn't real. He's an imaginary friend. But
well, Devin, that is 5 drinks down, 5 questions answered.
I am fully drunk.
They're excellent.